Oh yeah, what's up, everybody? How are you all? Good to see everybody. And here I am, ready to go again. Drinking my Heine 0.0. Pretty good shit. Just got back from Florida. Had a trip down to Florida. That was pretty kick ass. I always like going to Florida. So I'll wait for the queue to chalk up a little bit before we go into our things. Basically, I was going to talk about a couple things. First of all, about vibration and vibration control, because I think many people there's a simple way to explain it to people. I think a lot of people misunderstand it, and so I was going to talk about that. I'll see you, Daniel. What's up, Uptown Reef? Not in Miami. No, it's Clearwater, St. Pete, and Orlando. Yes, would love to visit Florida, especially Key West. Yeah, man, it's nice down there. Definitely. Florida's great, man. Florida's like decompression chamber, especially South Florida, Key West, Miami, down there. Really, really nice. Plus, you get Florida food, grouper nuggets, Cuban sandwich, basically Cuban food. We go for Cuban food and then seafood when we're down there. It's pretty awesome. Big time radio. You're here for the camaraderie. All right. Hey, Mikey, hope all is well. What's the deal with Spectral? I don't know too much about Spectral, but I do hear good things about it. So I've never owned it, but from what I know, it's good stuff. Yeah, I really can't comment on it. I've never had it. I think people that own it are generally pretty happy with it, from what I remember. What's up, Dan? How are you, buddy? Everybody's saying hey. Hey. Howard, what's up, Howard? Let's talk about cable suspenders. Vibration. Let's talk about cable suspenders, says Alex. He wants to talk about cable suspenders, cable elevators. Okay, so there is something to the cable elevator thing. Cable elevators are to keep cables off static carpet. Carpeting has static electricity. So that's electrostatic charge. That will affect and can affect, especially the outer jacket of nylon cables, which will hold that electrostatic charge. So unless you have static-free cable jackets, laying your cables on carpeting is going to mess with the static charge on the outside of the cable, which can change things. As you know, you've probably seen the Audio Quest and other brands that put batteries packs on the outside of their cables, and that is to charge and put a charge on the shield that goes around the cable because it can affect it. So that's just to give you an example. It's not the same thing, but it gives you an example of how changing the charge on the shield or what's around the cable can make a difference audibly. So by putting cables on carpet, it's just not a good idea. Now, by putting cables on concrete as well, as you know, if you've ever done anything with automotive, you don't put your car batteries on the concrete. Why? Because it acts as a capacitor. The concrete will drain your battery. If you stick a regular lead acid battery on your concrete garage floor, it will drain it. Okay. So if it will also interact with cables in the charge, and I don't know the scientific reason why or how, but it will interact. So cable risers get the cables away from any interaction with this whatever they're sitting on. Okay. And so there is some validity to it. I know it sounds goofy. Cable suspenders, cable elevators, cable risers, whatever people call them. But there is a reason for doing that, and there is some validity. If you're really getting into the whole minutiae of it, you're really getting into the squirrel hole, then you're going to start tripping on shit like laying it on your carpet. you know. So nice question, Dan. The vibration coupling pieces you sell work well with subs. Of course they do. And really any spike will work good with a subwoofer. You absolutely never want to set a subwoofer on a floor. You just don't, or on rubber feet. It just doesn't, it's not, you want to drain the vibration out of the cabinet. And the reason why it's so important with subwoofers, because subwoofers vibrate a lot. It's a lot of vibration in a sub, typically due to the low frequency. So you want to get that vibration out of the cabinet. The only way to drain it out of the cabinet is to use a rigid coupling. There's different ways to do it, but typically the best one is a metal spike. The best metal, the metal with the best resonant properties, is brass. There isn't anything better. The other ones don't resonate as well. They don't transmit vibration as well as brass does. So anything brass, it doesn't have to be the brand that I sell. It could, and as a matter of fact, I don't even sell them. I just promote them. I just tell you guys about Live Vibe, but nobody buys Live Vibe from me. I send you straight to Live Vibe and you buy them from him. So it's something that I promote that I don't sell. And there's a handful of things that I promote. Sublime Crossover is another one. Just an example of things that I tell you guys about that doesn't bring me any money. You know, it just helps other people. So yeah, they work great with subs. Hello from Sweden. Hello. Hello, Stereo Nord. Oh, instead of Stereo Nerd, Stereo Nord. I like it, man. And am I even saying it, or is that oo? So is it Stereo Nerd? I have to say it correctly if I'm going to say it right. The only reason I know the umlaut on the O is oo is from Uhlens, which is my favorite suspension for motorcycles. And for cars too. Uhlens is the real deal. Hey, here's Shane, Aussie Audiophile. Pretty soon, you guys, I'm going to feature Shane on my channel. He is the Australian arm, one of our Australian arms of the HiFi tribe, along with Martin at Dr. Good Vibe. He's telling us he has some stack audio footers coming from the UK for review soon that will be interesting. Also, component isolation from the same company. Yeah, you should put it up against Live Vibe Audio, you know, and see how it fares, Shane. I'm sure I can get you something. Since the kids moved out, I want to use my extra 2 bedrooms as sub boxes for the adjacent living room. Okay. Hope you and the family are doing good. Thank you. I am. Questions. Can you hook up the Sublime Crossover to a traditional 3-way studio monitor? Also, is the older 1.6 Maggie better than LRS? Well, it's the 1.6 is better for certain things, and the LRS is better for other things. The LRS is made using foil, so it's less mass, so it has quicker transient response. The older 1.6, if I'm not mistaken, has the wire on it, so it's heavier mass, so it makes better bass, stronger, fuller sonic to it, but it's a little bit slower. So you kind of choose what you want. But I love the older 1.6. I love the 3.6s. 3.6Rs were one of my favorite Maggies. Charles wants to know if listening to music naked would improve the sound. It depends on who you're with. Yo, Mikey, what's up, Mario? How you doing? Okay, Pete says, Mikey knows his stuff. I don't know about his equipment because I've never tried it, but the stuff about building cable risers, 100%. Thanks, Pete. Appreciate that. I got my cables off my concrete basement floor and swear there's a difference. Yeah, man. You know, again, concrete can hold it. Somehow it acts as like a capacitor. And again, I don't know the whole science of it, but I definitely remember when I worked at an automobile garage, we always set the batteries on a 2x4 or a couple 2x4s and never put them on the concrete because they would drain if they were on the concrete. So it has to do with whatever that law is, or, you know, whatever deal that is. What am I asking for Christmas? Ooh, I bought myself an early Christmas present. It's got 2 wheels and it goes potato, 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 potato. Is there an interaction between high voltage power cables and speaker cables? Yes, absolutely. Is it important to keep them apart? Absolutely, it is. It is because a power cable can induce current into a speaker cable. And it can, and especially interconnects. You really want to keep the power away from the low voltage stuff. So the XLRs and the RCAs, you absolutely want to keep them nowhere in the same vicinity. Speaker cables, you can affect them, not to as great of a level, but it can happen. So when you cross the two, you always want to cross them at a 90-degree angle, so that the where they are closest is just a very small part. You never want to run them parallel, power cord against speaker cable or interconnect against a speaker cable or interconnect against power cord. You never want to run them together. You always want to separate them. I used to go as far as zip tying them or attaching them somehow to the legs of the HiFi stand, and I would put power cords down one side and speaker cables down the other, and or interconnects, and I would just separate them so they were never close to one another. Now that's getting a little crazy, but hey, you know, and I had designed a whole rack that had holders that would hold the things apart, and it was kind of a cool idea. But I've got way more ideas than I have the ability to produce. Thank you for your questions, Mickey. I heard 20 hertz wave is 60 feet. Should I buy the house across the street and use it for a sub? Totally, bro. Do it. I think you should. Hey, Vooch. Vooch is in the house. Everybody say, hey, Vooch. He is in Scottyland, otherwise known as the place you buy the best cheese. Oh, well, I guess they would argue that Vermont is pretty good cheese, too. You know, maybe like somewhere Amish, Iowa, too, or something like that. But anyways, he's in Scottyland, Wisconsin. Hey, Shane, keep up the great work at your YouTube channel. Yeah, absolutely. Aussie Audiophile is a good channel. Yes, it is, man. And I'll be featuring Shane shortly. Doing well, saving up my money to build my 3-way bookshelf speakers, 50 to 50, 90 dB, 1 watt. When they are done, MSR should be around 4K for the pair. Sweet, man. Way to go. Shane says, yeah, we should do that, Mikey. Be good head-to-head and very interesting. This is an area that people don't spend enough time looking at, and it makes a real difference. Yeah, he's talking about the vibration. You know, it gets overlooked a lot. Austin asked Pink. I thought he was saying plink, so that's just thrown in there. I'm not sure what that means. Shane, it's got a stack audio base plate, tone arm board. Okay, Robert of Live Vibes about using his brass points. Yeah, so Dan, you can tell us about your comparison as well as Shane. We can get it from both of you guys. Yes, Joe. Dude, no way. With Joe Bryden, you're going to get shrinkage. There's going to be shrinkage. It's going to be shriveled. Your unit's going to go turtle on you. Earth is ground, so it drains batteries. There you go, Charles. Earth is ground, so that makes a lot of sense. So you're basically doing the same with, Mario. Mario's red hot, man. You hit it straight on the nose, buddy. Pete, purchased some LRS Pluses on your recommendation. I know you have workaround to make them sound a lot better. What is the workaround? How much it is? I think I'd like to purchase it. I've got a workaround. It's called a Magnapan Instant Upgrade Kit, and it's on 11 Stereo, which is right here, 11stereo.com. If you go there and you go to accessories, you'll find the Maggie, the Instant Upgrade Kit. You just plug it in. You take out the fuses, put this thing in, take out the jumpers, put it in. Gives you much better top end. The other solution is to rewire the whole plate. Take that plate off and cut your wires and resolder and do all that stuff. You can do that if you want. Mine is just doesn't involve any tools. It takes 5 minutes. It's $150. It's really super easy. I've got literally probably see, I have to call him back. That is just a quick and easy one. If you want to go get more involved, then you can just, wire past the whole, that whole plate on the back. Just eliminate the fuses and all that stuff. What do I think about Sorbotan? You mean Sorbothane? Sorbothane feet are okay, but I don't prefer them. I prefer rigid coupling. So let me describe the difference, okay? Many people use something soft, and the idea behind soft vibration isolation, first of all, there is no true decoupling. There is no true isolation. If you're in gravity, we have coupling. Everything is coupled to the earth, right? And so you have either efficient coupling, which is something rigid coupled, or you have inefficient coupling, which is sorbothane and other soft materials. The idea behind sorbothane and other soft materials is that you want to take the vibration, absorb the vibration, and turn it into heat, okay? The idea behind a rigid coupling is to transmit the vibration away from whatever piece you have it under. You want to get that, drain it out into something else. Draining it, or rigid coupling, is a much faster process. You get it away like that. It's quicker, okay? Sorbothane is and anything that's soft is much slower. To the process to turn it into heat is a slower process. So typically the sound difference from a soft vibration isolation will be a damping or a dulling, a more of a dull sound. It will soften. So if your things are too bright, you can put sorbothane under it. It'll make it softer sounding. It's easy to remember. Softer sound, softer materials. Hard materials for more of an edge on the sound, for more of a clean sound. Now, if your gear is terrific to begin with and it has a balanced, it's not too sharp, like say the Playback Design stack, for instance, it's never sharp sounding. You can put rigid coupling underneath it, like the Live Vibe, and it sounds even better. It just like clears away. I don't know what you'd call it. And it's not really haze. It's just like you don't really know that it's that you're having a clouded sound until you put a Live Vibe stand underneath. Then you go, holy shit! Like, I can't believe that. I thought it sounded good before. What the hell just happened? So it is very, and he guarantees his stuff. It's guaranteed to work for you or your money back. So there's really no loss in trying it out. And I recommend that everybody have a Live Vibe stand, even a Rhythm Junior. Even if you can't afford the stand, just put the cones with the little pucks underneath and put it under your DAC. If you just have to do one piece, right? In a perfect world, you'd have it under everything, okay? But not everybody can do that. So at least put it under your DAC and at least put 3 cones with 3 discs. That would be the bare minimum. And you're going to hear a difference, and he guarantees it. It just, and under speakers, it helps the wave launch, quicker wave launch, a quicker transient on something, something soft. And this is microscopic level. The speaker is going to move back and forth. There's something called moment in physics, which is the side-to-side motion, right? So when a speaker pushes the driver forward, actually the box moves back a little bit. There's a back pressure because of the force of the electromotive force of that pushing forward, right? That pushes the box back. If you uncouple your speaker, you take it off the spikes, you put it on something soft like sorbothane or a spring or something like that. When you push that forward, your speaker is actually going to move back microscopic, minuscule level. You can't see it, but you can measure it. And that is energy that is used in moving the box back instead of energy that should be in the form of sound coming out into the room. So there are losses associated with soft type vibration isolation. Those losses do not exist with rigid coupling. That is why I prefer rigid coupling. That is the difference between the two. Some people say, oh, you can just pour sorbothane or silicone is the other one. Silicone inside your components, inside your amplifier. I heard someone tell me that today. And I was like, damn, then you're definitely not getting rid of you're holding it inside your amplifier at that point. You're trying to turn it into heat, but you're definitely holding it. You're not getting rid of it. So that's the whole deal behind that. Let's see. My homie says that his Klipsch Best Buy speakers sound better than my LRS. He's delusional, but I love the guy. We'll let him believe whatever he wants. It's okay. As long as he's happy, man. Have a beer and be happy with him. Sorbothane, that's what we were talking about, Howard. We all have live vibe stands here. Sounds and look great. Yeah, they do. They do. Thanks. I think that's a great stuff. The Maggie upgrade kit is legit. My one. Here's Neil. Neil bought the Maggie upgrade kit. His 1.7s. Here's. I didn't pay him to say that. Literally, I've got probably 700 of those kits out there. Maybe 500. Not one. Well, maybe one return. You know, in 500 kits. That's pretty killer. Recently bought Synergistic Research MiG 30 mechanical interface grounding footers for my DAC, and what an amazing improvement. Yeah, I mean, you can cause great improvements with weird stuff, man. You can put a chunk of quartz on top of your gear and hear an improvement. You can cut tennis balls in half and get improvements. There's a lot of whacked out stuff that makes improvements on your audio gear. It's pretty wild, and it's fun to play with for a while. You know, I mean, I went crazy for a couple years. I went nuts trying this stuff. Absolute bonkers. That's where, you know, one of my clients in Florida coined me OCD. He would just pick up the phone. He's from New York, and he'd go, OCD. I'd be like, hello. He'd go, OCD. So I thought that's funny. And then when I thought of a name for the channel, I thought, why not be OCD Hi-Fi guy? Because he would always say that, because that's how goofy I was when we were talking a lot back then. We were really getting into these tweaks and telling each other and trying different shit and going down the rabbit hole deep. But man, I had to get off the crack pipe. You know, that shit'll take you away. You'll get so stuck in tweaks that you become a lunatic with it. And it's like, after a while, when I just started buying more expensive gear, and it's not really more expensive, okay, so I should stop and not say that. When I started buying higher quality gear or a higher level design gear, the tweaks became much less important. And really, the only important one now is the live vibe stands, a couple tube traps in my room, Puritan AC line filter on my line, and that's it. I don't do the fuses and all the other stuff. Just so that you're clear, the Maggie upgrade kit is a fuse bypass. So let's see. What is your opinion on Teal 1.6 for 400? Well, totally worthwhile. $400. I don't know what the 1.6s are, but Teals are great speakers. Now, keep in mind, a Teal is a hard to drive speaker typically. I don't know what the 1.6, if they're the floor standards or whatever. They're hard to drive, and they're very particular. You need to put them with an amp that has a lot of juice, and you're going to do a lot of speaker placement to get them perfect. It takes patience to get Teals dialed in, but once you do, they're phenomenal. They're just absolute amazing speakers, but they are finicky, so you need to know that. But they are $400. Come on, man. It's really it's you know, that's a no-brainer. You just want to make sure if they're used that the surrounds are good, because sometimes those surrounds, depending on the material, can get cracked and flaky and stuff like that. You want to make sure the drivers are good. So buying used speakers can sometimes be a very good deal. Sometimes you can get into something that needs repair. Before I used, and it did dull the sound. Yeah, absolutely. It does. It will, you know. So that can help some people. It can dull the sound, and that might be good for some people. Yeah, people don't know what they haven't heard until they hear the difference. Exactly. You kind of have to put something in, and then you can hear the difference. And it's weird. That's the same thing with like taking the AC noise out. Man, I have dedicated lines, and you don't know that there's noise on the line until you remove it. And then you're like, wow, like, I can't believe that was there. I couldn't hear it at all. I mean, the speakers are dead quiet. You don't hear any noise until you remove that high frequency off the AC power line. And then like these details come back, and you're like, damn, that's crazy. Weird. So you have to take it away to do that. Do I have to have a special stand for rigid coupling? It doesn't necessarily have to be special. Okay, so if you're trying to save money, right, and that's your concern, you could probably get away with like I don't know what you'd get that would be brass points, you know. You could do it with aluminum or stainless steel, other company, but brass is the best, man. You could take maybe like a brass bar stock and then try and shit. I don't know how you get a point on it. You'd have to put it in a lathe and do that, you know. And at that point, unless you own a lathe, you're going to be paying somebody else to do that for you. You might as well buy the Live Vibe stuff because they've got certain contours that they've played with. They played with different contours, and there's not just one type of brass. There's like 5 different alloys of brass, maybe more. There's naval brass. There's machining brass. There's cartridge brass. There's you know, there's all these different types of brass. They know which one works best because they've been doing this for so long. And now I'll take a little second to say, please subscribe to the channel. If you're not subscribed, give a thumbs up to the vid. I appreciate that. Okay, what are the thoughts on constrained layer damping? They can work very good. Constrained layer damping, you use that is very effective. And certain constrained layer damping, the viscoelastic stuff from 3M, some of it, you can put it depending on which chips you can use. I used to cut little teeny pieces of that stuff and put it on the DAC chip and stuff like that. You have to make sure not to put it on a chip that gets hot because you will reduce the cooling capability of that chip, and you can overheat a chip by putting that stuff on there. But so I will put little teeny bits of it, not cover the whole thing. And it's crazy. Like, you can hear a difference. You put it on your freaking DAC chip, a little sliver of that constrained layer damping, thin stuff, you know, and you're like, oh my God, it cleared things up. And most all of this stuff is degradation due to vibration. And usually the result is typically the same. It clears things up. And it is a clearness that you don't know. The thing is not clear until you hear that fuzz or that whatever taken away. It's like a veil is lifted or something, you know? And so you can play around with that. I have some kits of constrained layer damping. I need to put them on the website, as a matter of fact. I've got them all made. I should put them up on the site. I'll put them on the site soon. Let's see. Would using brass Live Vibe spikes improve the sound or the stainless steel spikes on my speakers? Or is that getting squirrely? No, the Live Vibe brass is the best. Okay, so stainless steel is good. It's better than nothing. It's better than setting that speaker on the floor. It's better than rubber underneath the speaker, but brass is going to do a better job than stainless steel. And you can give the thread to Robert, and you know, he'll thread them on there, or you just thread them on. Take off your metal ones, thread on the brass one. Take off your stainless steel, put on the brass, and just listen. You know, and if they don't improve, it doesn't improve things, then he'll give you your money back. So that was the thoughts on constrained lane damping. Interesting comparison between soft and rigid. Coincidentally, I have sorbethane under my 12-inch sub, and we'll take your recommendation. Find spikes for sure, and then let us know, Mario. Hoping? No, you're not. You're not hoping he's getting hand cramps, man. You want that guy to be cramp free. Soldering the DAC 7. You definitely want him cramp free. Have you ever heard of Black Dragon cables by Moon Audio? No. No, I know Drew, right? Isn't that his name? Drew from Moon Audio. He bought an amp from me, the VeraStar amp. He probably still has it. Back when I made amplifiers, I had a kick-ass 6-channel. He bought one. I think he's still got it. I don't know anything about the Moon Audio cables. I think he sells a lot of headphone cables. Last time we spoke, that's what he told me. He sells the piss out of headphone cables. I still haven't done that, but maybe I will someday. So I don't have any thoughts. I think Drew's a good guy, you know, and it's probably good. Klipsch La Scala, go. Right on, man. I mean, good old school stuff, man. And it's it is sensitive. The thing are, those are efficient, so they work with pretty much anything. What's up, Nick? Fantasy, how are you, buddy? Yeah, I had the same thing when I did dedicated lines in my room, Mikey. I couldn't believe what I was putting up. with, it wasn't huge, but it was like a veil was lifted. Exactly. And you don't know it until it's gone. It's pretty wild. Hey, Mike, you've been doing pretty well lately, so perhaps it's time to come over to Munich. I will be coming to Munich for sure, Joao. I've been invited by several companies to come by their place, and I will be going to some other countries. I got quite a thing lined up for Munich, so I will be there. And I love traveling to Europe. The food is so good. Do I like Prima Luna Tubex? I have no idea what that is. Oh, you mean tubes, like tube stuff? Is that what you're saying? Prima Luna is made in China and given an Italian name and sold by an American. And it's a smart business model. Uncle Kevy is a smart moneymaker. That guy is loaded. He knows how to make money. So I applaud the Prima Luna product. I know some people that have had it. It is not a product that is without repair. They do go back for repair. I have one guy who's had consistent issues with it where it went back a couple times. But he loves the sound of it. And I have other people that really like it. It's typically a stepping stone product for people. Typically they love it until they hear something like lot of Prima Luna stuff. I've sold people Jeff Rowland 125s. They're $4,000 Class D amps, and they beat out the Prima Luna, everybody that I sell them to. So, and then people are like, wow, I thought my Prima Luna was so good until I heard this thing, and I can't believe it's Class D, and I can't believe it's blah, 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 whatever, So, I think it's a decent stepping stone. I think if you buy them used, you can get a really great value with Prima Luna. So, buy it used, get a great value. If you're in that price point and you need to have a stepping stone. A lot of times, that the things that you're buying are a stepping stone, just like anything, you can't quite get the Porsche yet. So you get something in between. You get yourself a freaking, I don't know, 350Z or whatever the hell they are. I don't even know. You get something else, right? You get something cheaper that is not a Porsche. So, but ultimately you're going to get a Porsche. And so it's the same thing with HiFi. Sometimes you just can't quite go all the way there. So you buy something that is in between that will do for a while that you plan to sell. You just kick in, you sell what you have, kick in 500 more bucks, 1,000 more bucks, get the next step up. Then you sell that and kick in another 1,000. And it's like the stepping stone game, that you play until you get up into the echelon that you are comfortable with, or until whatever, you make more dough or whatever. Let's see. To preamp. I guess you're asking for a recommendation, or is that what you're saying? Prima Luna tube preamp. Oh, yeah, same thing goes for Prima Luna. I think there's better stuff out there. I saw a tube preamp Aesthetics Calypso today for $3,000. Fucking crush at Prima Luna, dude. Crush. Eat it alive, and made in America. What are my thoughts on 12 I2S is what you're trying to say. Via USB versus USB from DDC to DAC. It's pure silver USB cable and HDMI cable value improvement. It depends on the company. If they know what they're doing, yeah, usually pure silver is better. My thoughts on I2S, it depends on who's implementing it because it's a hack. I2S is not a standard. It's a hack. It's not supposed to be used the way we use it in HiFi. So there is no standard. There is no specification for it. Everybody does it a little different. So depending who's implementing it, I2S can be good. Other times it can just be not as good, So Miata. Audio Autopsy, the new Roland. Yeah, it is, as a matter of fact. And I've got some and I've got the big tube amps coming. Tell me the Porsche and do I sell the Porsche? Okay, so he says, tell me the Porsche and do I sell the Porsche? Yes. Okay. Well, I mean, there's nothing wrong with Aesthetics. Aesthetics makes great preamps. I sell something called Nat Audio. In some of my videos you saw recently, I opened it up to show you how exclusive the build was and the price that it's at, which is an astonishingly low price. When I showed you guys preamps that went 65 up over $100,000, and we looked inside of those and saw what they look like. And there's like it's not, especially the ones that were what 55 or something like that for the Vladimir Lamb, you know, like it's like you look at it, it's all on one board. It's like it's nothing. It probably sounds really good, but it's nothing special in terms of a build, and it's $50,000. So this thing was $8,000 that I showed you guys. Yeah, it's more than Prima Luna, you know, but it's just twice what Prima. I don't know how much is the Prima Luna preamp, $4,500, something like that. So this one's $8,000. I've got one open box that I'm selling for $7,000. It's on my site right now, and then I have one sealed in the package for full price. But even at full price, it's a great value, and it's a vacuum tube preamp with a tube choke. I'm sorry, it's a solid state preamp. It's fully balanced, so it's meant for balanced operation, and it has a tube rectifier in the power supply, which is a nice addition. It's a nice sonic. Okay, hi, are my cables solderless? No. I currently own cables that are, and the terminals break off. Easy. Yeah, my cables use solder, not the power cords, of course, but the other ones do use solder. My round wire, my foil is also soldered, but I use a very high quality solder, and I have a patent for a solderless design that I will implement someday when I can throw a couple $100,000 into making a freaking connector for the audiophile group. And it might, you know, it might not even, I don't even know how worth it's going to be, because if what the ROI, if it's even worth it, because it'll be a couple $100,000 to like tool up and make this piece. And then in the end, I'm offering something for you guys that locks you into Virastar cables, because it's a proprietary connection. So the only cables that you'll get that'll fit this connector will be my cables. So that's a hell of a hunch. That's like doing an Apple thing where they put out a special connector and a special thing, and you really have to know that the market is going to want what you have. Now, I have science and things to back up how mine will improve on RCA and all that stuff, but still, it's kind of a gamble to hedge. If I have a couple hundred G that I can just throw, and I don't have to be too concerned about really making it back in any sort of fashion or whatever, then yeah, you know, I would do it for just to put my I don't know how to put this properly. It's like a way of showing your stature in the industry, is like, look what I have created and what I can innovate and what I'm capable of. I'm not just a YouTuber. I'm not just a guy that can put together systems and sell systems. I'm somebody that can design a patented connection scheme that beats all previous connections, RCA and XLR. It combines them together and it beats them in every way. That would be some big balls shit that I could throw out on the table that would be fun for me to do. Just because, you know, people like to sometimes talk shit about me because I'm rough around the edges. But if I do a big balls move like that, they can talk all the shit they want. I've just stuffed a big old fist in their mouth, you know? So that would be fun for me from that standpoint. But I have to think, you know, that's not enough of a motivator to do it, to just show people, you know, it's kind of stupid motivation. For me, it would be cool just to create something that is better than everything else that's out there. But it's a total audiophile thing. Nobody's going to care about it except for the audiophiles. You know, nobody's going to adopt it in the mainstream. So it's like, it's one of those deals. My Maggie 1.79 third-party MYE stands came with brass points with pucks, but soft isoacoustics GF feet sound slightly better on hardwood over concrete floor. So not sure rigid is always best. Hey, you got to go with what you like, you know? And the Gaia feet may sound better on those stands. You have to realize there's more than just the speaker and the stands and the brass. There's like the gear. Okay, so let me give you an example in your situation. Okay, you're saying that your stands and your speakers sound better with brass, with soft rather than with rigid. Okay. What I would assert is that your DAC is too sharp. Okay. Your DAC is too sharp. So it sounds better with a soft thing on the speakers because it tames the edge. Okay. So that's an example. Okay. I'm not saying that is true. I'm giving you an example. There's more things in the picture. So you can't say it is one thing's better than the other. When I speak as to like what's better in certain regards or what I like better, I'm speaking in terms of a perfectly transparent system that is right down the middle. It doesn't lean to the left or lean to the right. If something leans sharp, of course, soft is going to work better because your rig is leaning sharp. So you need to soften it out. So putting sorbethane works well in a rig that's too sharp sounding to begin with. In a rig that's perfectly dead nuts, right down the middle, which my rig is, adding something soft would make it a little not as much presence, right? So I prefer the rigid coupling. And then something that is soft, you would absolutely want rigid coupling, and you would want to put it in more than one place. And then you'd want to put, you'd need to coax that detail out. You need to use silver and different things. There's ways to coax the detail out of the rig, but your rig does not need any detail coaxed out of it because putting in soft feet made it sound better to you. That means it's on the sharp side to begin with, and we don't know why. It could be, a handful of things. So it's hard to pin it on the feet. But in your situation, the soft feet worked better. I don't dispute that whatsoever. So everybody has to understand what they do. That's like when I explained soft material is to dullin things and hard material is to sharpen things. That's so that you can learn how to tune your own rig. If your rig is too soft, you put some metal in there in coupling, rigid coupling. If your rig is too sharp, you can put some soft materials in there and tame out that sharpness. These are all tuning tricks. These are things that I do, that I've learned over the years, that I'm teaching you now, and not charging for it. I don't make you pay to hear my secrets, right? I just share them with you guys. So let's see. You get a Monster Miata with an ice. Okay. Playback DP3. What is a DP3 DAC? I've never heard of that. You mean an M? I don't know what's a DP3, Dave? If you don't have a great DAC and our vinyl guy, what component would you first put live vibe under? Preamp, for sure. Preamp. Well, or it could be turntable. I don't know enough about turntables to know, but I would put it under preamp or phono pre, probably be first. Zesto's audio. How is Zesto's audio? Supposed to be killer. I don't know much about it. I know it's supposed to be good. That's all. I hear good things about it on the inside. Jack's talking about his Porsche car. Here's Ryan. This will be good. Hey, Mikey, if I were looking for the most change in sonics for my tube power amplifier, which tube should I change out? Input tubes or output tubes? Well, okay. It's my first time messing around with tubes. Okay. So, Ryan, assuming all your tubes are 100% operational in their operational spec, then you want to roll the input tubes to get the greatest sonic difference, okay? Those are the small signal tubes, the little guys, right? But if your input tubes are brand new and your output tubes are 50% operation, you're going to get a bigger change from changing out your output tubes. So you need to know at what stage of the lifespan or the duty cycle your tubes are at. So understand and the only way you're going to do that is get a reliable tube tester or a person that can reliably test your tubes and give you a percentage of how much of that operational envelope you've used on your tubes. How old are they? How worn out are they? Okay, it's like checking the oil in a car. At some point you want to change those tubes, even if they're still playing. Tubes typically will just fade out and get weaker and weaker. They don't explode when they're done, right? When they're done, they just operate like shit. They still work. You can still hear them. It's rare that a tube will just, fizzle out and not work. It's just they get weak, okay? So that's why, like, when I'm talking to people with tube amps and they want to change, I'm thinking of getting another amp. My amp doesn't have the dynamics that I'd like. I ask them, when was the last time you changed the tubes? How old are the tubes? And if they say they're the original tubes, I tell them, well, shit, before you buy an amp from me, change your freaking tubes and then let me know if the dynamics come back. Because a lot of times those tubes are at 30, 40, 50% of their output because they're worn out. And you put new tubes in and bam, all of a sudden you got tons of dynamics. Or you've got an EL34 amp that you can bias 6550s into, or a 6550 that you can bias a KT88 into. KT88 is going to have great slam, and a KT88 will play in any amp that plays EL34 or 6550. And sometimes you can't bias it all the way up, to its full output, but you're still you're gonna get longer life if you can't. You just run a KT88 less hot than you would an EL34. So if you put a KT88 in an EL34 amp, you might not get any more power unless you can bias it up. You're either going to get more power out of the amp if you can bias it up. If you can't bias it up to that high, then you're just going to get a different sound, longer life, with no more power. But you're going to get a different sound and longer life. So typically, the general answer is input tubes. But the deeper answer is, you want to know how worn your output tubes are to determine which would be a priority. Okay, I have sorbethane on my Maggies on wooden floors. Based on your vast experience with 3.7 eyes, do you think spikes would work better in my case? I don't know, Joao. What is your sonic overall like? Is your sonic, if I ask you about your system, is it dead nuts in the middle, or is it a little bit sharp, or is it a little bit soft? Where is it? Quicksilver, American can make some very nice P2P wired amps and preamps for less than Prima Luna. Yes, that's true. Yep, I agree. Quicksilver is a good American brand, pretty basic stuff. And it's not Chinese. And to be able to get a Chinese amp, the more expensive than an American built amp or preamp, now that's a magic trick. And again, hats off to Uncle Kevy for being able to produce some shit in China and then sell it for more than the stuff made in America. That is that dude's a magician. Okay. I'll give him that. We love the rough edges, Mikey. That's what people say, man. When I tell them I'm not going to be so controversial, everybody tells me, man, don't, stop it, man. Do it. Keep doing what you're doing. Don't stop being controversial, And I'm like, well, okay, maybe I can do it in a more tactful way. But I'll never stop exposing what I see as, just lack of integrity in the audio industry. I'll keep doing that. So you don't have to worry. The Maggie 1.7, the stands that you can get now from the factory, custom stands, unbelievably great looking, really help the sound of the Maggie, and they fit your Maggie. Check that out, brother. Yeah. So you change the stands. You need to make the Maggie more rigid. What they're talking about is normally the Maggie's flimsy. The stand, the little L-shaped brackets that you get from the factory, many times are flimsy. And that means when the speaker's pushing out, like I described before, some of the energy goes into pushing the speaker back. So how do you make a Maggie sound better? You make it so that thing can't move. You make it rigid. You put a rigid frame on it. You can do it a million different ways. You can make your own. I've made my own. There's a lot of different ways to make a Maggie rigid, but that's the idea, is to make the Maggie rigid. It'll sound better if it's made rigid. So you can do that in many, many different ways. Daniel Hertz, Mighty Cat audio chip, DSP, BS or legit? It's legit. I personally don't like DSP. I just don't like DSP. Now, because it's hard for me to know that you're digitally changing something, it's like you're using an algorithm to change something. I know what the Mighty Cat chip does. Not totally specifically, but I know in what realm it operates. And these are little, what it does is the Mighty Cat audio chip corrects for the anomalies of PCM. Okay. In my world, I use a DSD DAC. I don't use PCM. So my ears never hear PCM decoding. Okay. So I don't need to correct for it with anything. DSD cures the same thing, in my opinion, that the Mighty Cat chip does. Mighty Cat chip does it differently. It goes after the PCM stuff. And Mark is very smart. And creating that chip was very smart. Even thinking in those terms of how to correct for PCM by using an algorithm is very forward thinking. So I applaud Mark for that. I applaud Daniel Hertz for making that chip. That chip should be in cell phones and in cars and in TV and in all sorts of shit. I think that's where, to me, that's like its perfect fit. You know, sell it to Apple, sell it to Samsung, something like that. You know, get them to put it in every phone. It'll increase intelligibility and all that kind of stuff. Less fatigue. I guess they don't care about fatigue. It's about fatigue, really. You know, that's why Mark does it, is because less listening fatigue. You know, if I've heard a couple PCM DACs, Nuontech is one of them, that does not have any of the typical telltale artifacts of PCM. So they don't need that chip, you know, in my opinion. But it is legit. It's definitely not bullshit. He goes after a physiological response that the body has to the anomalies of PCM and of digital analog conversion. There's anomalies in just converting shit to digital and then converting it back to analog. There are anomalies because it's not a natural process. You got to understand, once you go into digital, it's not natural. It's not organic. It's a freaking computer algorithm, right? So your body trips out on it. Your body's like, inside on a small level, your body's tweaking. Your body's like, you know, it does not compute. But somehow the body, you know, overcomes it, just like we do with optical shit and stuff like that, right? Your body's, what's the word I'm looking for? It adjusts for it, right? And so you don't really notice it, but it is fatiguing you on a very small level. And they've done tests, you know, to measure that fatigue, what the body does when you're listening to PCM versus, say, DSD, or versus like something with the DSP post process, such as the Mighty Cat chip. So it is definitely not BS, you know, and it's I think hats off to Mark for developing a chip that did that. That takes balls, and it takes money, and it takes chutzpah, you know. And Mark, he's the guy for that shit, man. You know, I really applaud him for that. MP3, MP3, dude. Are you sure that's it? The MP3 is like a music compression. MP3, you never want to listen to MP3 files. I know you're trying to think of the Playback Designs DAC. You're asking me to compare the Merlot to what? The $24,000 MPD8 Dream DAC? Is that what you're asking me? Let me know, Dave. Joe says, what's my opinion on Type H, like old Carver or Sound Craftsman? I don't know, man. Once you say old Carver to me, I want nothing to do with it, especially if it's Class H and old. Class H is like the newest, latest technology. I would only kind of trust Class H in stuff like a Denon receiver for your home theater. You know, those are probably the only companies that I think have enough R&D that I would trust to use Class H implementation. I don't know anybody that uses Class H for HiFi in any sort of a meaningful way. I would love to know if somebody did. They had Class, what, T, was it the TriPath chip amps for a little while? That was a little fad that came and went. But I don't know about Type H. All I know is that it doesn't really have a foothold in HiFi. It's mainly, you know, in something else. Tubes, auto bias. I love how this guy asks question. He's just firing shit he wants me to talk about. But hey, it's easier that way. Auto bias is done in a certain way where you feed off the cathode. I can't remember exactly, but it floats. Okay, so this means it floats, and it floats off the voltage of a tube, and it adjusts the bias by floating off a tube. Okay, so the way that it works, it has other anomalies. It's convenient because you don't have to set a bias, but it is detrimental, and it has drawbacks because it floats off the voltage of something. It's not consistent. And a fixed bias, I determined early on that I like fixed bias tube amps. Now, if it has auto bias, you know, it can still sound good. Doesn't mean it can't sound good. But if I have my choice, I'm going to choose a fixed bias where I sit with the damn little meters and I set my bias, and I know where my bias is on every tube because I know it's going to be identical on every tube. It's not going to float weird on this tube while it's different one on this tube. And I just, you know, auto bias has its drawbacks, and I looked into it years ago, and I got deep into it, and I determined that fixed bias was best for me, for my likes. But I can't remember the whole argument about why, because it was long ago. I went into it, I researched it, and I determined I want fixed bias, and that was it. If I have a choice, you know, if I have a choice of two amps that are very similar, one has fixed bias, one has auto bias, I'm going to choose the fixed bias amp. Typically speaking. Now, if they've got new types of auto bias, that is new technology that does something different, that doesn't whatever float off the cathode or whatever the hell, I can't remember how it works, you know, then you know, I don't know. I don't know about that. If there's any new technology. Meitner MA3 DAC versus MPD6 DAC. Is the playback designs worth the price difference? They're totally different, Dan. They're totally different. And MA3 is a very kind of soft euphonic sound. And in my opinion, unless your system leans forward, if your system leans forward, then I would sell you an MA3. But that's the only reason I sell MA3 is for somebody that has a system that leans forward and they want to chill it back a little bit. That combined with the fact that for like 11 or grand, you can get a freaking DAC with a streamer and a good volume control and a volume control all together in one piece. So the MA3 is a value. But it does have its drawback. Its con is that it's soft sounding. So typically, and to me, that means you got to use a good preamp with it, like a good solid state preamp with that Meitner. But then that defeats the purpose of it having a volume control on there, which is a cool feature. So the MA3 is a DAC that fits in a very certain instance for a very certain type of system with a certain customer that's telling me certain feedback about their system. You can't compare them. They're two totally different. They sound completely different. They're not even close. The MPD6 is extremely lucid, very it is dynamic, it's punchy, it is very lively. It is probably the polar opposite of the MA3. So they're incomparable. Great point about the Gaia feet. It's all about holistic synergy. My current DAC is Denafrips Pontus, so maybe a bit bright. Really curious about any upcoming demos you can do on the new OnTech line. Yeah, I will. We've got a new DAC being made for us by New OnTech. And so when that comes out, I pre-sell them. So New OnTech is sold. It comes and it goes. It's like sold before I even get it. Right now, I think I have like 7 people waiting for a New OnTech, the DAC 07. So I can't take them in and open them up. I don't even open them. I take them in and I ship them right to their end user. So, but there will be a new one coming, a more expensive one. Mikey, would I recommend a good tube tester? Also, can you bias tubes if they are starting to go out of spec? You can, I guess. You know, you can run hotter voltage. But, you know, there's only so far. There's only so much you can do with that, you know. And herein lies the rub. Herein lies the whole rub about the tubes, you know. They're fun to play with, but, you know, if you really want to keep everything in spec and you want to know that everything's in spec, it's just like you know, it'll drive you up the wall. And yeah, you can. The only good tube tester is that one thing, man. And it's $2,000, man. So if you got $2,500 you want to spend on a tube tester, go for it. Otherwise, you're going to be using an old one. Now, some of the companies make tube testers like what is it, Orange, or, you know, one of those pro audio guys. But all they do is test for if the tube is good or not. I don't think it gives you transconductance value and like all that stuff. doesn't check like the two the triodes, like if they're matched and stuff like that. You need to get one of those Amplitrex is what it's called. Amplitrex. Amplitrex. See if they're still in business. Hang on a second. I'm going to look here. Amplitrex tube tester. Amplitrex. They look like they are in business. And 1 year warranty. And let's see, order. Let's see how much it is. See if they've made any improvements. He doesn't even tell us. Sometimes we're out of stock. Yeah. As far as I know, the guy's always out of stock. You have to make them for you. He doesn't even tell you how much it is. I think that's lame when they do that. You know, contact us to check current price. Just give us a freaking price, bro. You know, I can't stand that. You know, what is he going to just to pay? You're going to feel you out and then give you a price, you know? So they were $2,000 last time I checked. Maybe they were last. Maybe they're trying to remember, man. 1999 something. He used to have the price on there. I can't remember. Next autopsy will probably be the Jeff Rowland 555. I've always felt that Wilson speakers are being carried by the high quality front end electronics that they are typically paired with. They definitely are. Where do you draw the line between excellent speakers and mediocre speakers carried by excellent electronics? Okay. Wow, that's a really good question. Where do you draw the line between excellent speakers and okay? So, and in the way that I feel about Wilson is that they're so accurate, and they're so accurate that they're excruciatingly accurate. They reveal all the uglies of everything. They're so you must have good electronics, or it's not that the speaker isn't going to sound good. It's that it's going to reveal your electronics. They're unforgiving. And when they are teamed with good electronics, in my opinion, they're still too detailed and too analytical. Okay. Now, perhaps I've only heard Wilson with this gear that they always team it with, it seems, that is a bad pairing. Maybe Wilson would be better with Jeff Rowland, for instance. Maybe Wilson would be better with Playback Designs and Jeff Rowland together. Maybe we could find a Wilson that I would love if we put my type of electronics up front. But anytime I've heard Wilson, it's been with freaking Griffin or Boulder or some shit that's just like, and then DCS DAC or MSB DAC. And these are all harsh sounding things to me. Maybe DCS a little softer, but MSB is hyper analytical. So I've not been able to gauge about Wilson. And so where do you draw the line? You know, he's asking me. Typically, speakers are either going to be analytical or they're going to be somewhat forgiving, which mean like a little bit musical. Like maybe Sonus Faber might be a good example of a speaker that is a little bit more forgiving. That's just going to be not so harsh on the top end, not so bright and in your face. Just a little bit more forgiving. But once you start getting into what you're talking about, which is band-aiding things, you're asking me like, you know, how do you, if you have speakers that are really analytical, you know, do we team them with more musical sounding stuff? Or, you know, I like to find things that are right down the center, transparent, that just bring the music and that don't give you any sharpness and that don't give you any softness, that are just right down the middle. Because if you don't do that, then you end up doing what you're talking about, which is wondering, is it the speakers or is it the gear? What do I need to change? Well, it's too sharp with those speakers, so let me put in a soft DAC. And oh, that DAC's a little bit sharp. Let me put some soft feet under it to tame it out. Like, you know, if you I specialize in finding the gear that goes straight down the middle, that brings the music, that doesn't need to have this recipe. Now, the tough thing about that is when you're starting with a system that you already have and you don't want to sell it all. Okay. I have people that call me and say, Mikey, I'm selling my whole freaking rig. I want to buy the whole rig from you, so I know it's going to work well. And I know it's going to be what you like. That I can guarantee results with that. That's a great way to go. But typically people are going to want to add one thing in, you know. The one thing that I know I can add in to any system that's going to do great in any rig so far, knock on wood, is the playback design stack. That has done wonders in every single rig that I've ever sold it in. Otherwise, you're sitting here, and I talked to other dealers, and I talked to another dealer the other day, and he was telling me how I carry this brand, which is, like, and I can't remember the brands, but I'm going to use examples right here. I carry MSB as a sharp DAC for the people that have soft systems. Then I carry, playback for the people that want something that's more on the musical side. Then I carry Meitner for the people that really need something soft. And then, and basically this is like, you're just trying to sell the person a Band-Aid. I typically don't like to do that because I know the chances are it's a 50-50 shot that I'm going to make this person happy by selling them a Band-Aid. If I can sell them a whole rig, I know I can make them happy. So he asked, where do I draw the line between excellent speakers and gear and gear mediocre speakers carried by excellent electronics? I don't know, man. I mean, I don't know where I draw the line. I just know what goes together. And so I put those things together all the time, repetitively. You guys hear me talking ad nauseum. People give me shit because all I talk about is Roland and but I find the speakers, the Fisher and Fisher speakers, Eggleston Works also, another brand that I carry that I haven't even brought to you guys yet. These things work phenomenal together with Roland. So I just pair things up. I try not to do this offsetting things and making one thing work with another. So I draw the line at just realizing it's not a mix and match thing. It's a holistic approach to system building. So I hope that answered your question. If it didn't, just ask again. Hi there, Stefan. Let's see. So glad I listened. I was about to buy from Upscale Audio. No, nothing wrong with Kevin, man. I mean, he's been doing this a long time. But Prima Luna is, if you want Prima Luna, buy it used, man. I don't think Prima Luna is worth what they charge for it new. It's made in China, man. It should be cheap. The whole reason, you guys got to remember, the whole reason we had HiFi was because it was a fraction of the cost of what our American stuff or European stuff was. And it could come close to the sound, right? Now it's the same cost and sometimes more, and it still doesn't match the sonic. It'll come close, right? It still is the same level of quality. Maybe they've gotten a little bit better in their build quality, but the sonic quality has never been off the charts. You've never heard really of Chinese stuff being in the magazines on the front page as being renowned for its sound quality. They just, I don't know what it is, but it's like, it's just like a Chinese car. Is there a Chinese car that's renowned for being the highest performance? Is there a Chinese handgun or rifle that is known for its anything? I don't know, man. And I don't want to get down into it, but typically they're great for making things that are inexpensive and almost as good, right? That's what they're great for. So once the Chinese stuff gets to be over the price or the same price as the American and European stuff, and not all of it, of course, this is not generalization. I am generalizing, but it's not true for everything. Typically you're going to get more. So, but there's nothing wrong with buying Prima Luna. I would just suggest buy it used, if you're going to buy it new, support an American company, something that's going to benefit the USA. We need all the frickin' help we can get right now. Love the autopsies. I DIY because I can't afford the good stuff. And it's like learning. So I was right there, Pete, for a long time, man. How do you think I learned so much? Because I tore everything apart. I got inside it. Then I bought an amplifier company many years ago, and I sat with the engineers and I asked them all sorts of questions and looked over their shoulder while they made the things and learned, why do you do that? I'd ask them all a question. Why do you do that? Why do you make the ground there? Why do you do this? Why do you do that? And I learned all about circuit design. I mean, I can't design a circuit, but I learned a lot of stuff. So I get it. Remember the Peter Gunn Maggie mods? Yeah, man. Peter is a crazy dude to talk to. You got to talk to that guy sometime. And he's one of the shall we say, rare birds in the industry, right? You get a real taste of the hi-fi. I hate to use the word wackos, but I'm a wacko too. So I don't mean it derogatory, but he's one of us, right? A hi-fi wacko. And his mods were very good. I don't know if he still mods them. He used to only work on the stuff that was the 0.6. He never worked on the 0.7. He wouldn't work on any of the foil stuff, only the round wire stuff. And they were crazy, man. Some of them were so good. But you look at how much the mods cost and everything. And after the mods, at one point, they were a real good value. And then afterwards, they were like, I think they became almost as much as the new stuff, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if he still mods. I don't know. I will buy for Mikey when I do have the funds. Those Slate speakers are fire. You know it, man. They totally are, especially those little guys, man. And I'm about ready to bring some in that are not 4,500. They're 3,750. Even less. I know it's still a lot, but have an audio research. VS I-75 integrated sounds phenomenal. My setup, but I think I can use more power. If I go separates with ARC preamp and power amp, will I get the same sound? You might. I don't know enough about ARC to tell you if you're going to get a house sound from them. I would imagine so. If it's the same designer guy that designed your integrated that designs the separates, then yeah, you're probably going to have the same sonic. Tell us why audio research. Why do you want audio research? I went with the Magnerizer, stands for Magnapan. Very well made. Nice gloss pass. Yep, yep, that's right. Now Maggie is making their own Magnerizers. They're beating that guy at his own game. I learned something new each one of these live streams. Never thought about what changing the spikes or stands on speakers to tweak the sound back towards the middle. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you can put soft stuff under the speakers or you can put hard stuff under the speakers and it'll change your sonic. You know, it'll change the transient response, really is what it'll do. So, but you can definitely hear the difference. DSP only works for me before the external DAC. Yeah, any DSP after is audibly processed sounding, which is fine for movies. Yeah, but DSP before the DAC is okay. Yep, I agree. But I'm still not there yet. But that's the only way I would do it. Oh yeah, I was in Orlando, buddy. Dude, we had to haul ass, man. I rode a Harley back in freaking like 30 to 30, I don't know, low 40s. We had to haul ass. We were at Orlando Harley Davidson. We had to bail fast and get out of there. I couldn't stop, man. We beeline. We just hammered 80 miles an hour, hammered north, man. And it was brutal, but it was great, man. You know, so I'll come back down again, Steve. I'm sorry. Apologize. 2A3s are 45s for tweeter amp. Hell if I know. I don't know, man. I never had those Fleewatt amps. I've never owned 2A3 or 45s or 110, 101, whatever the hell. Any of those 3 watt or less tubes, I've never gone there. The least power I've gone is 8 watts with the 300B. I never went any less because I had no interest. So I don't know, my buddy. Whatever sounds better. That's the answer to that. 2A3s or 45s, whatever sounds better. Emotiva makes Class H amps. Not sure if it's AV or 2-channel or both. Okay, yeah. Well, Emotiva is just Emotiva, right? It's a home theater amp. So just like what I'm talking about, I would not use a Class H at all for audio. I would only use it for home theater. And I would absolutely use an Emotiva for home theater. In fact, I do use an Emotiva for home theater, but mine is a 7-channel Class AB. I bought the big ass one. I know Dan, he's a good guy. But you know, that's home theater shit for me. And home theater, I don't give 2 shits about. I don't care what it sounds like. I'll throw anything in there. I use a damn Marantz Pre-Pro. I use an Emotiva amp and I use in-wall speakers. and I watch freaking movies. I don't use it for music, you know. There's nothing that can do both for me, you know. How does the Roland sound compared to a tube amp? It's got better grip on the woofers. It's got better control. Better control, so more punchier dynamics, tighter grip in the bass, less noise. So it is really comes from a very, I hate to use this word, velvety black background, but it does. It's a very quiet amp. Yeah, that's what I would say. But it is similar to a tube in that it's on the musical side, right? It's not harsh at all. It would never be harsh, but it's extremely extended in the highs, and it's very lucid and very fleshed out, man. The mid-range, when the vocals come through, they come out of nowhere. You're just like, oh my, like, whoa, wow. Like I remember listening, and when we heard the vocals, they pop, you know. They do what a tube amp does in the sort of that magic mid-range, but they have more extended, they have less noise, and just better grip, better dynamic, you know, stronger. Yes, there is newer auto bias. Cathode bias is the old pseudo auto bias. Okay, so you know what I'm talking about. And the newer implementation that is basically integrated circuit control bias with continuous metering. Okay, well, thanks for letting us know. So that's good to know. That's probably the one that I like. But I knew that there was something messed about the cathode bias that was not like good, because it like floated, and I remember reading about it back in the day, and I was just like, nah, I don't want that. Some high-powered Emotiva use Class H, and it's shrill and nasty sounding, which is, yeah, probably good for home theater. That's kind of my thing. You wouldn't use it for music. The Maxi Matcher tube testers are pretty good for a new production tester. Maxi Matcher. What are they, just match tubes? MAXIMATCHER tube. Let's see. Maxi Matcher audio vacuum tube tester. I'm looking at it now. Oh, that little guy. I've seen this thing before. I almost bought this. What does it do? Such a very heck. Where is Maxi Burn? Yeah, I was gonna buy a Maxi Burn. That thing's pretty cool. Socket saver, power tube adapters. He's got a bunch of stuff. So let me see. Does it tell us learn more? Let's go there. Text. No, okay. Electrical plate current transconductance. Any of the standard pentodes include, okay, can be tested with optionable adapters. You can EL84 LAM. Novar power pentodes. I don't even know. 2A3 and 300B. Cool. EL5 and plate cap pentodes. Interesting. So that's pretty cool. So that looks like a good one. A Maxi Matcher. You know, that'll probably get you there for most of the tubes that you use. Now, does that have the 9-pin little guy tester too? It looks like it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's an 8-pin. And what about the little 9-pin signal tubes? Oh, with the adapter, maybe. Maybe you have to get an adapter. Anyways, so yeah, that's a good suggestion. Amplitrex is 1,800 and out of stock. Okay, so for half the price, you get the Maxi Matcher. Seems like the only way to maximize sound of the PB playback design DACs, you need to use a proprietary table that goes to their seemingly over-expensive streamers. What streamer to use as a good alternative? Well, seemingly over-expensive compared to what? So you're buying a $24,000 DAC. What are you going to buy? A $2,000 streamer and use USB? No, you're probably not. The guy who buys a $24,000 DAC doesn't really have a problem buying an $11,000 streamer. Now, if that's too much, you can buy a $3,000 D-to-D converter, which you can use whatever you can use your laptop, and then you can convert it to P-Link for $3,000. And it'll clock the data and send the data over for $3,000 plus the cost of whatever cheap streamer you want to use. You could use your laptop. And it pretty much renders the streamer kind of moot at that point. It doesn't really matter. You don't have to get an expensive one. The streamers that I like that are cheap are Small Green Computer. I have Emotiva monos paired with Rebel 228. Love them. Cool. Say hi to Dan. I have a Prima Luna Evo 400 power on your KT. Sounds very nice using Icon Passive Pre, but I didn't know Prima Luna was assembled in China. I thought it was USA, Netherlands. No, sir. It's a Chinese amp. As far as I know, unless they change something, but it's a Chinese amp. Chinese iron, Chinese transformers and stuff, as far as I know. Maybe they use German iron there in China. I don't know really the details, but last time I checked. What are my thoughts on the Solution integrated amplifier? Solution? You talking about Solution from like that? I have no idea, man. I think I know what you're talking about. Solution, the brand. I don't know anything about that brand. I do not participate. I am in Great Britain, by the way. Okay, cool. 10i Cheviot, 12-inch. Cool, man. A great speaker. Hey, Mikey, what do you think about Dolly speakers? I think they're pretty good, man. I don't know much about them, but from what I know, those are pretty good. I think they're made in Italy, right? That's a pretty good speaker. Best Tri-Fi stuff is Kinky Studio. Nowadays, you can find an EXM7 used for 2K. That's a hell of a frickin' integrated for 2K. I got to tell you that. It's not the best sound, but for 2K, it's pretty, you can't lose, you know? And if it's used, somebody else already, you know, gave China the money. So if you're going to buy it here used, then you're not really supporting, you know, the exploitation of humans. I own the Prima Loop Evo in my office with Tectons point-to-point wiring purchased during COVID BS lockdown. I'm now a tube fan. KT88 is my choice. Same here. I appreciate the live show. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. I also like the KT88. It's my favorite of the pentodes, the octals. Yeah, for me, SolidState sounds like radio. Tubes sound like live music. Well, that's because your SolidState that you've heard is not high quality enough, okay? So let me give you a little information, okay, from somebody that's done this for a long time, that has a lot of experience and that's owned amplifier manufacturers. It is easy to make a good sounding tube amp. Okay, so in other words, any shit-ass tube amp is going to sound pretty good, okay, because it's a freaking tube, okay? So you can have the Walmart. I talked to somebody the other day, bought a $300 tube amp on Walmart, from Walmart.com, you know? So it's easy to make it. It's no big deal. When you tell me your tube amp sounds great, I'm like, of course it does. It's no big deal. It's not that freaking hard to make a tube amp sound good. Yeah, I'm not like tripping that, you know, some guy can make a Chinese tube amp sound good. Jolita's another Chinese tube amp that sounds great. You know, nothing wrong with them. If you listen to, it is much harder to make a world-class solid-state amplifier. There's very few solid-state amplifiers that can rival a tube, but there are. And when they do rival a tube, they're better in every way. They do what a tube does, but they have better control. They don't have some shit that's antiquated that wears out. They're not hot. They're not, they don't wear out in different, you know, times and envelopes and stuff like that. In my opinion, top level solid state always beats tube, but there's very few stuff that is that high solid state because it's hard to do. Solid state amps are hard to make. In the case of Jeff Rowland is going to get me every time before a tube amp will. Now, I will put tube amps in sometimes because they're fun to listen to. They do this ethereal thing and they're kind of fun. But if I want to get serious, I'm not putting a tube amp in. I'm just not going to have a tube amp in my rig if I want to be serious. I have the means to buy the high quality, high level solid state. So I'd rather have it when it's as good as a tube. It sounds good as a tube and it has more grip and more control. Then I'm going to pick that over a vacuum tube. That's all there is to it. Vacuum tubes are fun. Don't get me wrong. I love them. I've got the biggest single-ended triodes in the world that I will feature on my channel very soon. They're freaking this big. It's 160 watts out of a single tube in Class A, single-ended triode. There's nothing like it in the world. They sound better. I'm going to have to put them up against the Rollins, but pretty much the last time I heard them, they were the best sounding amplifier I've ever heard. And I will give that to the Mighty Vacuum Tube in that instance, right? But man, if I'm gonna, these things are so huge, dude. It's like having 2 small reactors in my freaking room. You know, there's only so much of that shit I can take, dude. It's like bright as hell in my room. And it's like I have to put sunglasses on, you know, because that's how bright the shit is, right? It sounds better than anything, but it's like I got to take my shirt off because it gets too hot in the room kind of thing. So, you know, tubes are fun, man. There's nothing wrong with them. But after a while, it's like, look, a Cobra 427 is fun as hell. But are you going to use it every day? No, man. After a while, that fun shit is going to wear off. You're going to be like, it's not that important for me to peel out every corner, having, you know, 800, 600 horsepower in a 3,000 pound car. You know, that gets old after a while. It's the same for me with tubes. So they're fun. Don't get me wrong. They're fun. Paigey, what is Paigey doing here? There's one of my good girlfriends from Minnesota. She is on here listening to my drivel about hi-fi. Paigey loves motorcycles too. She's got a cool ass motorcycle. She's got an RZ, what is the RZ350? She's got a classic Yamaha RZ350 race bike. And she's got a Harley too, I think. Hi, Paigey. Love you. My Wednesday night chat is something to look forward to. Great, man. Thank you. I appreciate that. Let's see. That was what Raskolnikov. I'm not even gonna try this. Let's see. Raskolnikov. Is that right? Raskolnikov, 1863. Harasho. A good American-made Prima Luna alternative would be Rogue Audio. Yes, or Quicksilver, as Nick pointed out. Harley Life. You know it. Paigey knows all about it. What's up, Tex? Mikey boy. Yes, good solid-state sounding amplifiers where the rubber hits the road. It is, Shane. And Shane knows. Shane's old school, man. Been doing this for a long time, man. And once you've been doing this, you go through a tube phase. I think, is that fair to say, Shane? Do we all go through a tube phase where we try all the different tube amps? We try pentodes. We try single-ended triodes. We try multiple tube stuff. We try single tube stuff. We try the big monoblocks. We try all sorts of tube shit. Every tube, every different way we can try. We try tube rings and tube halos and all the different things, tube coolers and all this shit. And we try all of it just to see. And then we end up with freaking solid state because we're like, we don't want the freaking headache of the tubes. After a while, it's fun, yeah, but it's like, we don't want the headache. Just on mids and highs, though. Right. What, for tubes? Is that what you're asking, Tex? Better control, better grip, and what you get when you buy is what you have 20 years later. Exactly. You don't have to change the transistors out, you know? It's like, but you have to buy high, okay? That's the thing with solid state. You have to buy at a high level. Now, it doesn't mean you have to spend a lot of money. It means buy at a high level. So buy it used. Buy something 20 years old and buy it at a high level. It's better. It's better to buy something at a high level that's 20 or 30 years old in terms of a power amp than it is to buy something new that is the same price that is like made in China or whatever, but it's brand new. You know, you'd rather have the old stuff that's built to the higher level. Which model Jeff Rowland amps are the favorites from the current lineup and legacy models? Favorites from the current lineup were 555 for sure. That is a new territory. So I haven't heard anything like that. And the legacy, I don't know, man. I really don't know. I've been in the Roland scene for about the last 6 years, maybe. Anything before that, I really don't know. I had a pair of Model 12s that were like monoblocks that were 4 pieces. Those sounded good until I got my 625 S2 and it kicked their ass. A single 625 S2 kicked the shit out of a 4-box, Model 12s. So the legacy models that were really well known were like the Model 12s. The Model 7s were supposed to be the shit. But look, this is all old stuff, bro. They were built to a wicked high level at that point. But you must realize that like the components today that you can buy, that you go like to the component suppliers, like you have these huge wholesalers that sell you resistors and chips and transformers and all that shit, right? Like DigiKey or whatever. There's just, there's always material science is always getting better. Chips and everything are getting more efficient, smaller, better heat transfer, all this kind of stuff, better spec. So an amp built today is always a solid state, especially a Jeff Rowland, is always going to sound better than any of the predecessors. Absolutely. There's no way any new Jeff Rowland amp isn't better than any of the old stuff. Okay. So you always want to buy as new as you can. Now, if you don't have the funds, you got $3,000 or something like that, maybe, go buy an older Jeff Rowland. They're great, but just keep in mind the newer stuff is better, and that's a definite, and it's an absolute. Okay, so for solid state, make sure it's proper high spec. Yes, yeah. But look, man. Okay, so the flip side of that is for $1,500, you can get a 6 sounding tube amp. I remember buying a pair of freaking VTL MB300 monoblocks. Each monoblock had, is it 6 or 8? 1, 2, 3. It had 8. It had 8 KT88s per chassis, or 6550s. Freaking MBLs, VTLs, red anodized aluminum. It was so cool looking, man. They were black and red, and they were like freaking new. This guy had them in his closet. I bought them off eBay for, I think, $1,800 for the pair. One of the most retarded bargains I've got in HiFi. And so you can get just sickening, awesome sounding tube amps for next to nothing. You cannot usually do that with solid state. Solid state, you usually have to fork out the dough, and then you get your forever amp. A Jeff Rowland 555, that's a forever amp. You're never going to have to buy another amplifier ever. A 625 S2, forever amp. It's just so you spend a little bit more, but it all depends. But the upside to the tubes is you can get great sounding stuff for inexpensive. What do you think about atmosphere amps without output formers? Also, these 6 AS7 triads that don't need to be matched. Atmospheres were the shit, man. The weird thing is that Ralph right now says that his Class D amps are better than any OTL amp he's ever made. That blows my mind. He's got a pair of these little Class D monos that he sells. I think they're, I don't know, $4,000 a pair or something like that. And he claims they're better than any of his OTL designs. I always thought those OTL designs were so cool, and they were killer, and people really liked them. The only drawback to an OTL amplifier is if one of the tubes goes, it potentially blows your speaker because there is no protection on the way out. An output transformer can protect a speaker. Don't ask me the hows and the whys, but that's what I understand from OTL amps, is that it can potentially damage a speaker if a tube goes out. But those things are cool, man. I always like them. They're super cool looking. They're intense. Yes. So let's see. Dolly's made in Denmark. Okay. Even better. Keep up the good work, Mike. You're one of the most honest guys out there. Thanks, man. I appreciate you. Appreciate it. Someday I'm going to come, to Scandinavia, and I don't know if it'll be Sweden. I will definitely go to Denmark. I've got invites to Denmark. So I've got 2 people to see in Denmark and maybe 3 or 4. If I'm there, maybe I go to Sweden. I have people in Norway, a handful of Virastar guys in Norway. So I'd like to go to Norway, see the fjords. Do you guys have that in Sweden? I don't know. I have a Swedish car. I have a Volvo. Big tubes equals a future so bright, Mikey, you have to wear sunglasses. Exactly. I love the mid-range of ARC. Any other tube amps better than ARC? I think Nat audio is better than ARC, but it's a different beast. And Nat is, it's not going to be 300 watts like a big ARC, 15 tube, amp would be. I think ARC was always really known for their preamps. I don't know that I know they had amps a lot in the past, but I don't know that they had they weren't, as far as I know, weren't that well known for their You know, I tried to get recommendations. People always told me, go with Manley, go with VTL, don't go with ARC, don't go with Conrad Johnson. That was sort of, so I stuck with Manley, VTL. That was the kind of design that I stuck with. So I don't know the real answer to that, Johnson. But the NAT audios are single-ended triodes, so they require a different speaker. An ARC, if you have a powerful tube amp, mono, you can use it with almost any speaker, but you can't. The NATs are best with speakers that are 90 dB or plus. On the Prima Luna flagship Evo and 7 Audio Research LS27, the Dutch branded made in China Prima Luna was a great upgrade in comparison to my old AR. Yeah, I've never considered, I don't know, man. Audio Research used to be known for their preamps, but it wasn't the LS27. They were called something else. They were like maybe I'm talking about 30 years ago, they were known for it. I just think that brand may have petered out. I don't know how strong and good the stuff really is any longer. That's just my feeling. I don't know that to be true, but that's sort of the feeling that I get and the talk that is around. And I talk with many insiders. We got to all say a prayer for that brand, you know. I very rarely watch other people's channels these days, but Mikey, I always make time for it. Thanks, brother. I appreciate that. We're going to feature you soon. Tubes are like saltwater fish tanks. Won't do that again. That's funny. Yeah, I never tried the saltwater fish tanks. I dodged that bullet. I love to look at them, and it intrigued me, and I almost did. But yeah, let's see. Yes, Ross is the hero in Crime and Punishment. Oh, okay, got you. Sweet. Can you give us some good solid-state amps for under 5K, or is that impossible? Jeff Rowland 125 is $4,000. It's actually $4,300, but I would sell it to you guys for $4,000. I have sold probably 25 or 30 of those. I buy them a dozen at a time. So actually, I've done that 3 times. So I've got 30 to 34 of those out in the field. They never come back. And I have a bona fide return policy. That is something that people continually call me back and say how good it is, how they can't believe it. It's a small Jeff Rowland. It's Class D. It is solid state. But, man, this thing kills it. Kills it. I've got one right now. I lent one to somebody. And he's like, dude, this sounds so much like, what was he using? Oh, I wish I could remember what he was using. But he's like, it sounds so much better than what I had. And he has tubes. I can't remember what tube amps he was using. But the solid, and I know another guy that had Prima Luna that I sold the 4K Roland to that really, really said, hey, man, it beats Prima Luna. So that would be a good one. Would be the Roland. Anything else under 5K? There are some, I don't know if they're under 5K. I've got some 1 AGD Tempo. They're 5,800. I would sell it for 5K. That's also very good too. Compared to the 125, it's got a little bit more body. It's a little fuller. It's a little bit more on the musical side, a little bit more on the tubey side. What are some of the essential design elements and components that constitute a good streamer? Sans DAC. Does a good streamer have a real impact on sound quality if you already have a good DAC? Okay, so here I can wrap this all up for you in one sentence pretty quickly. Okay, if you've got 100% of money that you're going to spend 10 grand. Okay, spend 8,000 on the DAC, 2,000 on the streamer. So 80% of your budget should go towards the DAC, 20% should go to the streamer. That's how important the DAC is versus the streamer. The streamer is not nearly as important as the DAC. You can cheap out on the streamer, but you can't cheap out on the DAC. Okay. The DAC sets the pace for the whole rig. It is the heart of the digital rig. So that's there are small changes within that between a good, say a $500 streamer and say a $4,000 streamer. Typically what you're going to get that makes the difference is you're going to get a separate USB card or an audio card that doesn't come off the motherboard. Okay. So that's your first kind of step when you're looking at streamers, to know like base level streamers have USB outputs that come off the motherboard. And you'll know that because they'll all be in the same line. Okay. And then the better ones will have, you'll see the USB will be a little higher usually, or it'll be like this on the side or something like that. That means there's a USB card in there. You're going to typically get better sound from those. That's where you can draw a line and say, okay, I know I'm getting something better because I have an outboard, you know, an outboard USB card. Now, some of them will even allow you to put an external power supply to that USB card, where you plug in one 12-volt power to the computer or 19-volt to the computer, and then you plug in a second little barrel plug to that USB output card with 5 volts or whatever. And that's the best way to do it, is to have outboard power on both of them, separate power. You're not using motherboard power for your USB output card. These are some of the distinctions in the design that are where you draw the line. Another distinction is and this is my opinion, right? For whatever it's worth, you want to use a Linux-based streamer, not a Windows-based, not a Macintosh, OS-based thing. The reason is those, Windows wasn't made for music, man. It was made for word processing, right? It's a damn desktop computer operating system. Same with the Mac OS. It's a desktop operating system. When you get into Linux, you're going to get something that is just a whole piece of software, a distribution, they call it, a distro, that is made for only doing music, right? That's all it's doing. So the resources that the motherboard uses are much less. They don't have all these threads running behind the scenes when you're just doing a Linux-based music playback distro. It's just a cleaner install. It's a cleaner way to do things, in my opinion. Otherwise, you've got Windows and Windows updates and all this other bullshit, and it's running threads back and shooting back to Microsoft and contacting the mothership and doing all this weird shit that you don't have to worry about any of that crap. So I don't like JRiver. I don't like, some of those other ones that people, that are Windows-based playback systems or streamers. I like the ones that are Linux-based. Linux also doesn't need any drivers. You can put Linux with pretty much anything. It's how it does not need drivers. Linux is like works with everything. A lot of times Windows, you need to add the Windows drivers or add them the Mac drivers, the Apple drivers, whatever. It's like so those are some of the things that I've learned. And then a good power supply. You don't want to plug, you want to get a good linear power supply to power the computer. Any digital equipment is very, very dependent upon the quality of the power supply for that digital gear to sound good. That goes with DACs, and it goes for streamers as well. So you want to make sure it has a really good power supply. Typically, power supplies have noise on them, and that noise will jack up a computer motherboard. It just, for audio purposes, it jacks it up. For doing word processing and computer shit, it doesn't really matter. But when you get to music, it introduces jitter. It can have irregularities and stuff like that come with a poor quality power supply. That's why you always want to use these outboard power supplies and get a nice low noise linear power supply, one with low noise. And then, it'll improve the sound of that streamer. But you don't have to put too much in the streamer. These ridiculous streamers that are $26,000, $36,000, it's an absolute freaking scam. I mean, I can't say it any other way. It's like you look inside the thing and you're like, I can see that's an Asus gaming board. That's Optane memory. It's an elaborate power supply, but I can buy that freaking board off the shelf, and maybe they do some memory. Sometimes they claim that they do different little things in the memory or whatever. But the bottom line is it's a freaking computer. Like you go to freaking Newegg and buy it. It's a freaking computer for $36,000. I don't think NASA's computers cost that much a piece that do AI shit for the space shuttle. Maybe they do, I have no idea. But what kind of freaking computer costs $36,000? Nothing. A wicked ass gaming computer is like $6,000, and you're going to have the most hot rodded thing out in the world, right? So $36,000 for a pretty shiny box, and you put a gaming computer inside and give it some bullshit. Those are bullshit to me. So how's that for my feeling on that, for my opinion on that? Okay. I have a 3800 Yamaha SolidState still hanging in there. Cool. Rock on. Tex. Jeff Rowland is a neighbor, one hell of a rider and a true gentleman. Yeah, you know that, brother. Have you ridden with him? I haven't ridden with him yet, but we will. He's an off-road rider. So you guys know a couple of the audio folks, Ivana Manley, Inez from Voxative, Jeff Rowland, all ride motorcycles. Rowland has like a dozen motorcycles. He's an off-road rider. This guy is an enduro rider extraordinaire. He's a huge dude, man. He's 6'6" or some shit, you know. And this dude can rip off-road. You know, people have a hard time keeping up with him. I'll go ride with him someday, enduro in Colorado, you know, and have a little fun. But I'm a street guy mainly. You know, I take my bike to the track. I can do that. But off-road, I'm going to have to go a little easy and learn. Maybe Jeff can teach me. I agree with your assessment of power amps. What's my opinion on versus tube for preamps? Great chat. Tubes are much more proper in a preamp, in my opinion. They're small signal tubes. They're not cooking at a hot temperature. They're just millivolts are going through them. And a tube is a much more of a proper place, in my opinion, for a vacuum tube. The fun part about that is you can greatly change the sound by changing the tubes. You can really paint the picture that you want. And it's fun to listen to the different tubes and see what they do just for fun. If you just like, you know, want to kill time, let's hear what a Japanese Mitsubishi tube sounds like compared to the, you know, British Mullard, compared to the, you know, Danish Amperex or whatever, you know, you know, or Dutch, you know, Amperex. It's fun, you know. So I think in a preamp, it's much more appropriate. But we still have the issues that we do with tubes, and a solid state preamp is going to be more trouble-free. But again, it's probably even harder to find. It's just like it's hard to find a killer solid state amplifier. It's probably even harder to find a killer solid state line stage or preamp. So, and that's what Mark just asked as well. Well, yeah, okay. So how does the JR Eris sound? It sounds great. The Eris is a well-kept secret. If y'all can find an Eris, I've actually got a used Eris that I will sell. But the Eris is the closest thing to the MPD6 that I can find. So it is a very good sounding DAC. Credible analog designer. They don't engineers like him anymore. Yes, Jeff is an incredible analog designer. Nobody gives a shit as much as Jeff does. That's Jeff's. It's like the best thing about him, and it's like the drawback to him running a business, is he cares so much about his product that he still works on shit that's 100 years old, you know, and he still will do mods for the people, and he'll charge them like $300 or some shit, right? He's just one of those people. He gives a shit. There are very few people like that in our industry that really give a shit about the end user and the product that is sold. Most people are just moving widgets, you know, and that goes for dealers, for manufacturers, through and through, man. It's just a game with a bunch of shit out there that they're peddling, right? Just a bunch of dreck. It's just like a pool of used crap that just gets shifted around all the time, right? You have to seek out the really killer stuff, and you want the stuff that's built by guys like Jeff Rowland because they care, you know. And Jeff cares about the product. He doesn't just make something that works. He makes something that he can be proud of. So, like his 555 was finished 6 months ago. It didn't get released for 6 months because he was making small, minor changes and measuring and listening and like checking it out. And he wanted to make sure he will serve no wine before it's time, right? He's like Ernest and Julio Gallo in that regard, right? He won't put any amp out until it's damn well sorted. Very few people care about that. They want to get the shit out so they can start making sales. He doesn't do that. He's one of the few. It's very rare. Saltwater fish tanks. Yeah, man. Audio Research SP3 or LS1. There you go, Nick. It's the LS1. That's the one that you're talking about. LS1 is the famous Audio Research preamp that I was thinking of. Thanks, Nick. What do you think about subwoofer stacking like the 6-pack from Rel? I have no idea, man. Too expensive is probably what I'd say. You know, you got to realize subwoofers are freaking a box with a freaking driver in it. Okay. Ask Nick. Nick, how much is a 412 cab, a Marshall, you know, or an 812 cab, a stack? These cabinets got 412s in them. They're probably, yeah, I know they're not for sub. Well, a base. So let's talk about 415s. You know, I know I could have bought a vintage one that belonged to Kansas, the band, for three grand, and it was 4 615s. So if we probably got one that was brand new, it would probably be about 1,200, maybe $1,000 for that cabinet. And it's got 4 huge, like 15-inch things for bass guitar, you know, that you can play wicked bass through it, right? So when you start talking to subwoofer, I think subwoofers is one of the areas that's total. I hate to say it, but it's like cables. You know, it's one of those just ridiculous things that's completely overpriced for what it does. It doesn't need to cost that much, but they're able to do it. And people buy that stuff for ridiculous amounts of money. It's man, you shouldn't need that much bass in your excuse me, I almost said the F word. In your freaking home, you shouldn't need one of those things. I went to someone's house and he had those, and he had the JL Audio big Everest top of the line speakers, and then he had 6 of those freaking Rel things. They're all carbon fiber, and Jesus, they must have been 30 grand or something, you know. The first thing I said is unplug those freaking subs, man. We don't need them. We've got dual 15s on each side under that horn and that super tweeter. We don't need that shit messing with the room, man. And we took them out, and it sounded phenomenal, man. It was like, you don't need the subs. But people get this feeling like, I need to have a subwoofer. You don't need to have a subwoofer unless your main speakers are choking, okay? Then you need a sub, okay? Or if you really want to be that guy, you can get a sub and cross it over at like 38 hertz or 45 hertz and just have it do complete fill. And that's it. You're not even listening for tonality out of that thing. You have them super low crossed over. Then maybe you want to be that guy that has that in there. That's fine. You know, that's fine. You know, nothing wrong with that. But typically I think it's overkill and they're overpriced. You pick the 125 Roland over at Deckware Tory Jr. hands down, man. Thanks. Yep. Because he bought one. Didn't you? Yes, you did. If my generator monoblocks can't be fixed, which they can, what solid state amp would be an upgrade? An upgrade? Solid state? Still loving the symmetrical and the magical A3s. They require a ton of power for them. 88, 50 to 300. What's the budget, Vooch? I need to know what the budget is. Now I can tell you. What's your impression of the Holo Maydak? Not bad. Pretty decent. You know, not bad if you can pick it up for like $2 grand, 2,500, something like that. I think it's a decent DAC. I've had it here. It's a little bit on the sharp end, you know. So that's it. Not bad. Talking about motorcycles, food trips, and you know, I totally thought about that, Joao. You're reading my mind, brother, with this comment right here. I want to start something called the OCD Mikey Show, and I'm going to do that, and I'm going to have guests, and it's going to be like a podcast type thing. This just, you know, hi-fi gear only goes so far, man. It's a tool to get us to the music, and then after that, it's boring shit, right? It's just stuff, okay? And the bottom line is, you know, I'm about the experience. I'm not about the stuff. So I can talk to you about experience all day long. That's why I love food, because I love the culinary experience. I love motorcycles because I love the riding experience. I love I'm into music for the music experience and dancing. You know, I go freaking lose my mind when I'm at live shows. I dance around like a freaking spaz bot, you know, because it's fun and I love it. And I have a ton of fun, man, and it just feels good to dance. And that's why I have an audio system, so that I can get that feeling and that energy from the music. It has nothing to do with the stupid gear. The gear is a tool to get us there, and we have to have a proper tool. I don't want Chinese freaking wrenches to work on my hot rod. I want Snap-on, right? So I'm going to use the Snap-on tools. Same thing with my audio. It's the same thing with everything in my life. Okay. I mean, and you know, I mean, just the little shit. The fucking my pocket knife, you know, it's a fucking Benchmade, made in USA. It's like, you know, I mean, my wallet, you know, it's like aluminum, made in Denmark. It's got, you know, or Holland. It's got, you know, this thing flips out like that with a little switchblade thing, you know. You know, my watch is automatic, you know, it's made in Switzerland. You know, it's like, I mean, I could just start picking shit up off my desk. My scissors are like steel dressmaker shears, you know, because they're like, they hold the edge the best and they're long and they work good. You know, if I'm going to have some shitty screwdrivers, they're going to be Craftsman Professional, made in the United States. Maybe not anymore, but they were at the time when I bought those things. You know, I mean, I could just start picking shit up in here. You know, a notepad, you know, moleskin, you know, it's bound and got the little pocket in front, and it's a leather bound book, you know, and that's my little notebook, you know. I could start picking shit out of my closet, you know, and everything that you would see would be just, you know, so I'm picky about stuff. So it would be fun to have an OCD Mikey show, and then I could talk about all this shit. And it would be, you know, more interesting conversation. Then we could start having conversations about philosophy and shit like that. Then we're really getting into the good stuff, right? But this talking about stuff, you know, electronic gear, stereo shit, that's like, look, man, I mean, I know it inside and out. That's why I provide and I do what I do, is because I can cut through the bullshit for you guys. And I think that I'm providing a good service in an industry that's full of a bunch of bullshit, right? So that's why I do this. And it makes me a good living. So I'm not going to leave it to do something else, but I could add to it. And I think the suggestion, I will be doing it. And just, you mark my word, you'll see that coming soon. I've got my lights, which you guys can't see them right now, but I have, see, I can show you. See, I've got my proper, oops, it's turning, proper lights, and I'll have one above me soon. And then I've got microphones coming shortly. I've got Neutrik microphones, so I don't, you know, Mikey doesn't play around. Let me get this thing right here. Came loose now. Need to tighten this thing back up. Anyways, yeah. So I think that's a great suggestion, and I will be doing that. Holomay Dak, what say you? It's okay. So I say, not bad. So while my new MPD6 DAC is breaking in, based on your 80-20 formula, would you please sell me an... That's funny. Yes, you're welcome, right? Yeah, see, Dan's behind you on that shit, isn't he? Tell Jeff to get a distributor here in Sweden. There is no representation for the time being. I can sell it to you, Joao, anywhere where there is no Roland distributor. And in fact, sometimes I can sell where there's Roland distributors if the guy's not doing his damn job. So I can sell to you in Sweden, brother. Not a problem. I've shipped Roland overseas to Germany. I sold to Germany. And playback as well. I can sell playback designs there too. So how much is my Eris? I'll sell it for $6,500. It's a $11,300 is the price of them new. I will sell you mine with a full warranty, which you won't get from anyone else. So the full 3-year warranty, I'll sell it to you as new for $6,500. And it has an outboard power supply, as you know, all the original packaging, all that stuff. SP10 2 chassis preamp is the iconic one. The LS1 is just line stage, I think. A little newer than the SP10. Okay. Great. I don't know enough about ARC. Never interested me enough to learn about it. I just heard it made great preamps back in the day. But it's not, it's just like Nelson Pass. And I freaking love Nelson. He's the greatest guy, but I just never wanted the gear. Just like I never wanted audio research. I never wanted Conrad Johnson. Just stuff I've never wanted. I never wanted Carey. I never wanted PS Audio. I'm not putting PS Audio on the same level as ARC or Pass. But there's just certain brands that I don't care about, and audio research is one. But I'm not saying they're not good. Marshall 4x12 new are about $2K. Vintage Okay, greenbacks are nice speakers. What I use anyways, right? So it's just a little thing for about subwoofers. Just for fun, I'm doing a comparison between the Audio Music DAC 1 and the Holome KTA. There you go. Okay, someone else talked about Audio Music. I never even heard of that stuff, but someone else was asking about it. He was saying, he came on here saying that it kicked the MPD8's ass. So why don't we straighten them out, shall we? Shane, let's do it. Still about the stuff because I love learning. I get it. I get it. Nothing wrong with that, brother. And I was too until I learned it all. Then I'm like, okay, now I know as much as I need to know. I definitely don't know everything, but I know as much as I need to know. I'm chock full of all the information in HiFi that I need to know to get me through this life, 25 watts each. They break up nicely, which is good for guitar amps. Yes, for sure. Do you agree that subs can be used as high, mid, and low bass? Sure. Not high mids, not highs and mids, but high bass, mid bass, and low bass. Absolutely, sure. You can use them that way. Okay, so I think you're asking me that because I said you cross them over at 32. But I'm talking about most of the time subs aren't needed, okay? Because for high and mid bass, most any floor standing speaker can do high and mid bass, okay? Low bass is why you would want a sub. So if you got speakers that have 12-inch woofers and that's not enough low bass for you, then you need to get your ass at 21 and cross it over at 38 and then be that guy if that's what you want. But typically a well-built speaker that has 12s or even some of them with 10s, that's all the freaking bass you need in a goddamn regular room. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I'm going to quickly get through these because we're at 2 hours. So I'm over. Are Magnepan speakers considered neutral sounding speaker? How well do the ADG Audion sound with Maggies? AGD, Alberto Guerra designs. The Magnepan are neutral sounding. They're very neutral. And they're very open sounding. Very, very good sound. The AGD sounds great with Magnepans because they were designed using Magnepans. Alberto has Magnepan 1.7s. That's what he uses to test his gear and do his development. So you could almost say they're made for Magnepan. It's not the truth, but they are made using Magnepan. They're not made for them, but they're made for using them. My toilet paper is probably made in the USA. Yucky. Count us in with OCD, Mikey Show, and dance. Rock on. Okay, brother. It doesn't. The MPD8 is the granddaddy. Of course it is, Shane, right? We know that, man. The MPD8 is everybody's granddaddy. It doesn't matter. Andreas Koch is granddaddy digital music. So, nobody can take him out of that. So anyways, thanks for another great live stream. Thank you, everybody. I got to bail. It's been 2 hours. I've given you 2 hours of my life tonight, and I'm tired. So I'm going to go to bed. I'm going to watch some Better Call Saul. We've been doing a marathon. I never watched it. Now we're doing a Better Call Saul marathon. That is a funny movie, man. It's funny. I think everybody can relate a little bit to the Saul just being an idiot and making those stupid mistakes as you're learning not to. Okay, as an Aussie at audio, yep, felt the May KTE was too hi-fi sounding. Yeah, that's what I thought too. Okay, everybody. Well, I'm out of here. Thanks everybody for joining. I will see you again. I'll get back. I was out of town the last couple of days. I'll get back to doing my morning blabbers and keep you guys. I didn't waste my time, David. My time is very well paid off. Trust me, this channel and what I do here gives me a great lifestyle. So it is not wasting my time, and I'm happy to do it. But I give you this for free, and I teach you. So anyways, thanks for joining, and I will see you guys later. See you.